Now, how am I going to decide which is face side and which is face edge? Well, everybody's got their own preferences, so this is the way I'm thinking my process through. I'm just looking at these first two pieces of the rails, and are there any obvious defects that I need to avoid? Well, the first thing, just here, that hasn't quite been taken down. There's still a bit of rough, so I'm going to avoid that as the face edge, which means for this piece I will use this side. And then which has the least defects? Or to be honest, it's this side. So I will go for that. All of them, if you notice, they are very square all round, so there's no problem with which corner. It's just a case of which is the best for that particular piece. Same with this one. There's a little bit of juddering there, so that's the nicest edge, and that would make sense that is the face side. And that's all I'm going to be doing, is selecting which sides I'm going to be using most of, which has the least defects. Now you'll notice on this piece here there's a depression, so I'll avoid that as the face side. And just here there's a little hump, but that one, there are far fewer problems on that, so I will use that one as the face side, and I'll make that one face edge. So it's a case of just looking which one's the better of the set, and and then I'll know from which side to take things. There we go. Those are marked up and all ready for making the cuts. So how am I going to be working this? Well, the face side and face edge have now been marked, so it will be a case of we're always working from the same reference. The reference will be the table and the guide. So the face for this height cutter, it will be a case of the face edge going downwards onto the table and the face side going against there. So that's where everything will work from, and that's my depth. So that will be a case of making sure that that end stays in contact with the table at all times, and what I'm going to be doing is actually clamping the workpiece to the guide. That way it won't tend to move, because that's such a big cutter that it would be very easy to, you wouldn't be able to hold it firmly enough. So like that, that moves nice and steadily, and then just take one pass straight through. In fact, let's do that now. The vacuum's in place, the cutter is switched on. Now that was nasty. That should not have happened, that little kick. So I'm going to make sure that everything's all right. No damage. So let's see what happened. Make sure those are tight again. Let's have another go. There we go. So just to make sure, that height from the table, that is actually low, so that's an error. I've miscut that one. That means that is actually 12 millimeters. So although that is 30 millimeters, that's been miscut, so I'm going to have to be careful about that. Well, that travels nice and freely. But that's a little bit of a worry. Okay, we'll see what happens. So with a minor adjustment with the height of the cutter, I've now got both shoulders at 10 millimeters, which is what I wanted, and I think it was a case of the clamp just not quite holding securely enough, but this second attempt worked. I can work around this one, that's no problem, and I'll just have to remember and work out exactly where it's going to go. But that's the first rail, first pass cut. Just do the rest. So the short rails are the ones I'm going to be working with first, and face edge, face side. face edge is always downwards, face side is always against this fence here. That's the registration place to give me the position. And to stop things moving around, clamp securely. Last time, you'll remember, things moved a little when they shouldn't have done, so it's a case of making sure everything is nice and tight. Because this cherry is quite a hard wood, then I've got no problems with it bruising at all. Okay, so that's the first one done. It's firmly against this fence, and just to check, it misses that side of the fence, so again it won't get snagged on this corner. So here we go, the power is on, ears are on. And so that's the first pass. And I just want to double check all of the measurements. So the depth of the cut, well, that's actually 21 millimeters, so that's a bit too much. But the depth of the cut, and again, that's moved. I'm going to have to be careful of this, because that one's 11 millimeters, that one's 8.5. So I'm going to have to think about this one. So I've made a minor change. What I realised was that when I register the piece against the fence here, because of this little bit of the table being a slightly different angle to that, and the cutter and that bit of the table are 90 degrees to each other, the workpiece actually has to be in contact with here. Because there's a slight tilt, I've got to make sure that that is held down as I feed the work through. But I've also made a slight adjustment with the positioning of this fence, just brought this edge out just a touch, and that is now making that length there 19.5 millimeters. That's exactly what I want. Okay, so after that little diversion, I've come to realise that there is now also a problem because of my concept of what I needed to do. Face edge, face side, always keep one of them in contact with the board, the table here, which was fine, and my thought was just turn it round, but that will mean the face edge is no longer here. That's the only way I can do it, so long as my thought is, and I look forward to hearing the comments of my neighbour Tim on this point, on best way to do this. This is what I'm going to be doing. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm sure somebody in the comments will make that known to me. But hey ho, that's what I'm going to do because of my little miss of application perhaps, but we'll see. Okay, let's crack on. that is in contact with the table. I can't get anything under that. So keep that one, that edge pressed down like that as I feed it through, and then all the dimensions should be correct. Good. One thing I'm very pleased about as well, on the breakout side where the cutters come through, there's very little actual breakout. Tiny fibres, but that's not doing any damage whatsoever. That's nice. So let me just keep double checking that dimensions are correct. Yep, under 20 millimeters, 10 millimeters, that's lovely. So that's the last piece of the short. So that's the last piece. Very, very pleased with the way that these cuts have gone. Now that's interesting. That has been drifting somewhat. So that's 12. Okay, nothing's lost. I just have to make sure I put the mortises in the correct place so that everything lines up correctly. Not to worry. So here we've got 6 long rails, 6 short rails. All of them had their first passes for the tenons. All I've got to do now is change the cutter and we can put the next lot in. Now that was 12 pieces, so I've made 24 cuts. It's 10 to 4, so that was really in half an hour. I've managed to do 24 cuts. That I'm very pleased with. What I'm going to do now is, as I say, is just change the cutter, make sure that's in the right place, and then that'll be it for today. So change the cutter. Let's just disconnect that. Loosen that. That means I can then move that right out of the way. Make sure the power's off. What have I done with the main spanner? Always make sure that the cutters are nice and clean before you put them back, and that way they will give plenty of long life. Of course, you've seen me do this before. Detergent to loosen the swarf. You can't help but get a build up, if you notice, just here. It builds up just there. And that's what you need to loosen. Get a better cloth. And use the cloth in association with something fine. That's got it. There we go, that's that one. This is the top, sorry, this is the bottom. Because you remember me mentioning the top and bottom cutters have, the new cutter has a maximum speed of 15,000 RPM. The bottom cutter, which is the older of the pair, only has a top speed of 12,000. So that's how I know which one's which. There we go, that's nice and clean. But of course, because this is water based, I don't want any water lingering, so a quick squirt with WD-40. wipe those clean. Just to get rid of the excess. There we go. Finish it off with oil on the, primarily on the cutting surfaces, but of course that's going to spread elsewhere to aid protection. And how do I know which side's which? Of course, only one side's got the printing on. That goes face upwards. So, oil everywhere. Fit that. Those are the two spaces just to finish everything off. And what have I done with the nut? There it is. I still can't do this by feel. That's nice and tight. So, unlock this. There we go. Pop that on there. That's a new cutter. Of course, I want it tight enough so it doesn't slip, but loose enough to put it in. There we go. So, anything that I've already cut with 10mm is fine. To check the cutter height, and I don't know whether you can see that, but that's just about right. So fine adjustments come later. Now if you remember as well, what I did was mark 19.5 millimeters from the edge of the cutter there. That's where the fence needs to go. So like that. There we go. Tighten that down. And make a test cut. And that will be the adjustments all done. So, piece of scrap wood. So long as it's not a rough dimension. So where am I going? I think I will use this piece here. One of the scrap pieces from the other day. Reconnect the vacuum, get my ears, switch the power on again. Okay, so that is actually 10 millimeters and it needs to be 6, but you see that has given me a perfect 6 because I've done all of that shaping before. So, and then the actual depth of the cut is 19 millimeters, spot on. Let me just adjust the height. Get some more light on things. Six millimeters. I could do this. Let's have a look. 6 millimeters. Let's have a go. So that depth is 7. You noticed things were moving a bit. I just cannot hold them steady. So let's do the clamping. 5mm, a little too much. That's why we've got that sliver there. But that is looking good. But there's the test mortise. That's a nice tight fit. And these were only tests, so that obviously will be 30mm on the final pieces, like that one. That's a nice tight fit. That's looking good. So all in all, that is a success, and we will come to the second pass in the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again.